Welcome to Chaos2Cured podcast. You're here with Jeffrey Freed and Kirk Patrick Miller. Today, we're going to talk about the good things and some of the amazing benefits. And this will be the first show of many that we'll go into. But for children and adults, any person that's not a neurotypical, so whether they're diagnosed, whether they're on the spectrum, whether they're deal with hypersensitivity, these things take a great toll. And we often on our podcast have focused on the costs, and we want to make sure that the parents and teachers out there understand that there's a lot of really wonderful things that come with these. It's a double-edged sword. So one thing for me that I have found to be very vital for parents to understand is how hard these children try. And, I know I just had one little child that came in, and he had a meeting with the principal, and the parent wanted, him to talk with me afterwards, and got in trouble because he was not nice to someone. And he's interrupting in class, and he's definitely on the spectrum. Wonderful, bright young man. And it's one of those things where the teachers see this impulsive child, and they see interruption. They see him raising his hand and getting in the way of the other classmates by, jumping or doing a tangent. And I don't think, actually, I know quite often the teacher has no power in terms of they can't add extra time, which is hard on the teachers. So they kind of have to shut the child down. The hard part is that oftentimes they're giving this really brilliant, beautiful idea, a different path to get that ties in with what the subject material is. So there's all these really wonderful gifts that we do get. And on one side, and the reason I gave that example is because you see one perception of someone where they're the teacher or the classmate, and they're saying an interruption. And, unfortunately, we don't have a society where everybody can, just join in when they want to. But from the other perspective, you have this individual that's excited about sharing. You actually have a student that's engaged, and oftentimes that interruption gets punished. The point is that there's two sides, there's two different viewpoints. And for me, again, I like to take the positive. And so, Jeffrey, for you, I know this is going to be an easy one for you because you helped me with my confidence so much when I was younger. What are some gifts that you have seen and you continue to see in people that are oftentimes scoring like in the lower 10th percentile on certain things in their tests? Sometimes they're not even scoring anything at all. They don't even participate. And then you see the brilliance. Can you give some people some examples?
Yeah, I can. My whole thing is teaching people, visual learners, how to use their incredible visual brains to learn basic skills and to take in information. The main thing, the number one great skill that almost all people on the spectrum have is the ability to think in pictures. That can be used, it can be galvanized to do almost anything differently. When a person who's a visual learner is fascinated by something, they can have total recall. We all know people who have incredible memories, for example, and the non-sequential linear learner, they don't tend to be able to retain images very well because they primarily think in words. So you take somebody and you show them a spelling word and you ask them to visualize. And if they can visualize it, what the deal is they can reproduce it, which is really, really cool. I teach people how to spell this way by first at the shutting their eyes, being able to spell it forwards and backwards. And what we have then is we have visual. You're using your visual brain. You can read a book and you can focus on making a picture, absolutely just making an image and retaining the image without having to read it again. As long as you're visualizing, you're learning, and you don't have to write notes either. I mean, some visual learners do, but most of us tend to not like to handwrite, and we tend to have trouble handwriting and visualizing at the same time. Because when you're writing, you're looking down, and when you're visualizing, you're looking straight ahead or up to the right or to the left. That's one thing that can be taught to every visual learner. And the bottom line is, I can sum it up pretty easily. If you're visualizing it, you're learning it, and the better your image, the better your recall will be. We should teach these children, once we figure out that they are visual learners, to be visualizing everything and to come to their teacher if they're unable to visualize, and to say something as simple as, I was unable to visualize what you were teaching. Could you give it to me one-on-one, please? And in this world where the teacher kind of knows that the kid is going to have to do this in order to retain the information, the teacher will say certainly, and come up with a time and place where they explain it one-on-one. And these guys learn so well one-on-one and not as well in a group. The other thing is if you think, these people all are very sensitive to other people. They're deluged, good word, by information from other people. They just don't know how to deal with it when they're young. But their incredible ability to read people, to use their intuition, which they have in spades, gives them a really nice advantage in life. They can read other human beings, and if they choose to, give them what they want. They also can kind of tell if somebody is dangerous or not real, because they're looking at other things or paying attention to other things besides people's words. They tend to look at the body language, and a lot of people will listen to this and say, hey, that's not true. My people on the spectrum can't read body language. The answer is no, that's not true. They not only can they read body language, they read too much of it. A problem of being on the spectrum is you are accused, if you will, by so many people that you can't read body language. You can't tell if a person is good or bad. You get fooled all the time. No, it's not a condition where you don't pick up enough information. It's a condition where you pick up too much information. And it makes it hard to pay attention to a few things when you have so much coming at you. But if you know that about yourself, and you're not worried about it, and you're not all tied up doubting yourself, you can be marvelous at reading people. And man, ask any mother of a kid on the spectrum whether that child can read them or not. And it would be, yeah, they can read my mind. They know I'm going to do something before I even knew it. That's what the potential is. And we're not touching it. We're not even touching it.
No, I knew that would be an easy one for you, and it's something I feel that is important for people to honestly recognize and talk about. I mean, we spend so much time seeing and focusing on what the constraints are, and I have my own. You talk about a phenomenal skill. And to all the listeners, I'm sorry, I'm still I have a mental fog still from COVID-19, so I'm a little scattered. But one of the things, and that's really frustrating for me, by the way, because I'm used to having my mind very, very quick and sharp. Um, when you said like visualize thing, there's two things I wanted to respond to. One, I love the visualization and ability. That was something that really helped me. And you also had me visualize different letters in different colors, or I would describe like the color of the word. So you would tie in colors and some things like that that I remember really helping, especially for like spelling words and things I wasn't interested in. It was a way to make it more interesting.
Right.
Um, uh, but you brought up one of these amazing gifts, which is the ability to, see somebody else, and they're like a sponge. And for me, it's overwhelming.
Mhm.
Um,
Well,
forgive me.
let me take it, sort of finish the idea. Um, People's perception of what the spectrum is and the way people on the spectrum process the world is really off. Nobody really, very few, I couldn't say nobody, very few people really understand what is going on. They see autism as a problem, as something that will, not enable the person on the spectrum to live a normal life. And they treat these people that way, talk slower to them perhaps, and use simple words, and then the person on the spectrum gets the very, very strong suggestion that they're intellectually disabled, they're not very bright. Deadly. That fills them with fear. And if you take that same kid that is all constipated, if you will, and locked up in themselves, and you treat them with respect, you teach them to use their wonderful visualization abilities that are mostly latent, you teach them to use it, and you can turn that same kid into a very highly successful student and or person in life. We have gifts, people on the spectrum. We have tremendous gifts. But the reason most people never realize them is because nobody gets it, and they treat these folks as if they're broken versions of themselves, if they are indeed linear learners. It's a bad mixture.
That's how I
School,
was taught. That's how I
it's like,
was, treated in school. And you know what? This is not a slam on any of the teachers, because I certainly made it easy for them to kind of pinpoint that I was a pain.
they have a tough job.
Yeah, it's not easy. But I was constantly, thought of as being a troublemaker, problematic, interrupting, not paying attention. They'd call on me. I'd have no idea what they're talking about. So they assumed I wasn't paying attention. And when you're constantly given up on by every single person around you, what happens? You stop believing in yourself.
Yep.
And so that's why I wanted to do a show about some positive stuff. And I think this is one of my favorite ones, the ability to visualize. For me, you mentioned handwriting. I my handwriting is absolutely atrocious in English. When I write traditional Chinese characters, they're beautiful. It literally makes no sense. Why would
Well, I know why. I know why.
I bet you do.
It's because when you are doing something artistic, or that your brain perceives of as artistic, the right hemisphere takes over and does a really, really good job. When you're doing handwriting, which is very mechanical and structured, you have to make it the same way all the time. You're using the left hemisphere. Your left hemisphere isn't as powerful as your right hemisphere. It's sort of, we all have two hemispheres, but a lot of us prefer the right hemisphere to the left. Some prefer the left to the right. And handwriting has definitely been proven to be something that's done primarily in the left hemisphere. And art, like calligraphy, which is a form of handwriting, is done in the right hemisphere. So very simply, you want to use the part of the brain, they should be teaching handwriting as calligraphy. Then
Absolutely.
we would be better at it.
Well, it's fascinating because when I went to school, when I was in kindergarten, they wanted everybody to write their name on, so a little card. It was a 4x6 card
I
that they put on
remember.
their desk. And I was like, well, I want to write mine in cursive. And they're like, well, you can't do that. I'm like, well, I'm going to do it. So I did it anyway, right? And because it was fun. But what did I have to do in school? I had to go back to regular old, structured writing. They would not let me continue. I'd already done that before I started kindergarten. It was, and it's not like that's like that hard to learn anyway, right? I mean, it was a pretty simple thing, but for me, I needed the artistic, the flow, the feel, and it's also something that I've definitely in visual spatial individuals with or hypersensitive individuals. We're talking about both images, and the other thing that you had mentioned, and I really want parents and teachers to feel this one, which is when they read someone or they read the room. I would say there are people out there, politicians who are great at reading a room. I would say that people on the spectrum, people who are hypersensitive, the way I would describe how I feel is I feel the room. And the reason I use the difference in terminology is if everybody in that room is angry, I feel that anger. It kind of almost makes me, I don't want to say I'm a lemming, but it makes me feel like I follow what the flow is of whatever that room is. And at the same time, if I'm say in a room, like with a class and I'm having all this bombardment hitting me at the same time, it does become a little overwhelming. Now, if you have those abilities and you're a counselor, a psychiatrist, I would love to see people being able to get through the school system and becoming a psychiatrist or a doctor without having to do the traditional route. I know that's a pipe dream, but I feel there are so many amazing, like out of all of the people that I can think of that would be compassionate and be able to instantaneously feel and empathize with, a client that's sad is someone who's on the spectrum. But so many of them, or again, someone who is, bipolar, again, non-neurotypical. The reason it's heartbreaking is because I know they'd be really phenomenal at some of these jobs, and you need such a high level of qualifications to have them. And they're, again, the ability to do that. So putting that skill and knowing that skill exists. And I'm so happy you brought that up because, like you said, that's a stigma that's incorrect about people on the spectrum. And that stigma of they can't feel anything. Oh, they're not able to pick up that we're upset. No, they're shutting down because you're upset, and they don't even know how to process that level of anger. And let me
throw something in.
Go.
People who are diagnosed autistic, they have a firm diagnosis, they're middle or low functioning. Their thing is this: because they're so sensitive, they pick up so much information from the environment. And after all, there's a lot to pick up if you have the ability to do it. That what happens is, in order to survive and not perceive the world as total sensory bombardment, they just go inside their head and shut down and pay attention to nothing. And that's what autism is. right there, it's a defense mechanism. And for people who aren't on the spectrum, who are, just very visual, they get elements of total shutdown, but it's not severe enough. They don't pick up as much as the full-blown autistic. I have no doubt that if a child is born on the spectrum and later they're going to be very autistic, that what's going to happen is the world, and they obviously can't verbalize it, the world is an assault. The light crushes their eyeballs. The sounds sound like a thunderstorm. The sensations of the clothes and of the wind, everything is so overwhelming that the person, the little boy or a little girl, shuts down the world to survive. That right there, that last minute of what I said, is really important for people to figure out. They will figure it out. I have no doubt if we don't destroy ourselves as a species, we'll figure this out. But there's going to be a lot of damage, a lot of collateral damage in the interim. And that's why I want to get this out there so people can process it. If it works for them, to use it. If it doesn't, discard it. That's all I ask.
Well, part of when you look at what you just said, again, the key part is how much potential all these little ones have.
Yep.
And we miss so much of it because we feel and we want people to be cookie cutter. Everybody needs to follow this route. Everybody needs to act like this. Everybody needs to fit this mold. And that makes people comfortable. The problem is that we're missing out. We're losing brilliance because it's being overwhelmed. It's being forced in different ways that it shouldn't be. We're trying to teach everyone exactly the same way. And if you think about that, how absurd is that? To teach everyone the same way. We know every single person is quite different.
That's what mass education has to do, I guess.
It does. It doesn't have a choice.
They have to do that. And there's a lot of damage. And I will say something else too. There is nothing more dangerous than taking a person who feels everything more. They get insulted in a more intense way. They read people's negative thoughts and positive thoughts. And what happens is, of course, because they have every sense that's attenuated, what'll happen is they're constantly getting information from the environment, from their environment in school, that they're broken, that they're not good enough, they're not smart enough, and all that energy gets buried, repressed, and can come out very inappropriately. It can come out as an explosion, a meltdown, a violent episode. I myself have no doubt that, I've hear over and over again that these school shooters and these mass murderers didn't do well in school. They didn't talk much. I'm no doubt that these are the people that have been told that, or get the strong feeling anyway, that they are broken. And the anger builds up, and it's not because these people have trouble articulating thoughts and dealing with the power of their emotions. It can come out and be very dangerous. And over and over and over again, when you look at Columbine, when you look at some of these other shootings, the murderers are repressed and probably, I keep hearing they have ADD, they have autism, they have Asperger's. Yeah. So that's a huge negative downside to not making or using these people and teaching them how to use their strengths to learn things.
I absolutely agree. And we do want to differentiate. I think a lot of times mental health is the scapegoat for anytime there's an unexplained, mass casualty or a mass shooting. It's the first and easiest way is to say, oh, this person is insane, and I feel like it's a scapegoat. I do feel that like you said before, the person is broken. I feel like society breaks a lot of people, and I think a lot of it is because they don't see the gifts, we don't utilize them, and I want to throw this out there, and we can do a follow-up on this one, and we should. They have talked a lot about how, Chat GPT and some of this AI stuff is bad. To me, I'm looking at it as this is something that can individualize education. It's a brilliant way to utilize it. Everybody has a laptop, and everybody can learn math their way. It says explain 2 + 2, and then it'll explain it. I don't understand it that way. Can you try again? You have access to the internet. I don't mean to put teachers out of a job. That's not my point. My point is that to parents that are looking and you're wondering why your child is really struggling in a certain area, and you don't have many options, you might not be able to homeschool. You might not, again, it's got nothing to do with the teachers. They're trying their best, but why not use it? Download it. They can ask questions. How do I do this? I don't understand it. There's too, and again, there's just too much potential in all of these young ones, and we don't want to let it boil over. Like Jeffrey, what you were saying, we never want to let it get to that point. And the gift is so powerful to be able to feel others, to be able to, that's what helps you heal someone else. It's what,
empathy. Yeah.
It's such a powerful tool. And it's, what? It's what helps people innovate, because they think of somebody else's need before somebody else thinks of it. That's what companies want. The problem is the very people companies want aren't allowed to work for them because they don't have the right degree. The people that are going to change the world aren't really, you want to talk about discrimination, education at the higher levels is a form of discrimination, in my opinion. And I'm not saying that education is bad, and there's a huge difference between the two statements. I feel like knowledge is very important. I do not feel like there's any one way to get it. And I feel like that's too limiting. But again, we're missing out. And to companies that might listen to this podcast, look to people that are not scoring perfectly on everything. Look at things that are not, again, if you can tell if somebody's going to be a total mess or a disaster, there's a lot of other ways that you can do it. It shouldn't all just be judged based on resumes and certifications. I feel like the people who imagine, like we talked about at the beginning, being able to see something and visualize, conceptualize something different, that's a powerful tool for a business to have. And when do they get to use it? A lot of those people are honestly, and I do not mean to demean any person on the spectrum with bipolar, with schizophrenia, or anything. I don't mean to demean any of them. A lot of them are doing menial work with these brilliant minds.
The waste, and very important. I know we're going long, but I don't care. It's like this particular point that I'm about to bring up is worth a lot. One of the first things that is done, and used to be done all the time, more than today, is you get an IQ score on someone. An IQ test is a timed test. And there's a lot of implied pressure when you're a little sensitive kid getting their IQ tested. You're too busy reading the person or trying to find out whether they're nice or not, or a threat. And because you're doing that and the test is timed, you're going to score really, really low in some areas. And then they get labeled as retarded or developmentally delayed or whatever, or challenged, or whatever the new phrase is. And the problem is that IQ is not accurate. I've seen people get PhDs with an IQ in the 70s, but the problem is, or the reality is, their IQ is not in the 70s. The test is faulty. And too many people pay too much attention to that.
Oh, far too many. And it's always entertaining to see. I think there was a Twitter poll on some guy, and he said, how many of the people here, what's your IQ? And it was, There's like, they could click 1 to 110, 110 to 120, 130, 140, and like 50% of them clicked like 140. And I'm going, statistically, this has to be, either the most brilliant following ever or something else. To your point, the timed variable is massively, again, and we just talked about time, but there's so many beautiful aspects to these minds, and we need to open up to the idea that a different way of thinking is not wrong. It's just different. And that whole idea, and we need to be more patient. We need to let them work and figure out how to do this. We have the technology now where someone can be remote if that's how they function better. 3 people can be at the office. There's different ways. We just can't keep losing great minds. And honestly, labeling them as mediocre is wrong, or worse, or disabled. I don't like the word disorder. So all of these issues to me are hidden strengths. We're just looking in the wrong direction. So that was kind of the point. I know we went a little too long, but Jeffrey, your points are really important. And let's talk about some AI and some education and stuff for the next one. So thank you to everybody for listening. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to, of course, our next show. Take care. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to Chaos2Cured podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with everyone you know. And definitely like, follow, and subscribe. Certainly leave a comment if you'd like. Let us know what you'd like us to talk about the next time. Also, in our show notes, there should be direct links where you can follow us on our social media, as well as reach out to us directly. Thanks again, and have a great day. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on Chaos2Cured podcast are the speaker's own. All discussion is based on our own experiences. We do not and cannot guarantee the accuracy or completeness of any information. Chaos2Cured podcast cannot give medical or health advice. All discussion is based upon our personal experiences and meant for general and educational purposes. This podcast is not a substitute for professional help or for diagnostic purposes for yourself or another. Chaos2Cured podcast always encourages you to consult an appropriate professional.